right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of NAP News Now. I'm Elisa Tagg. I'm the Association Director with NAP, and with me today is special guest Tim Anderson. How are you today, Tim?
I'm well, thank you. And how about yourself?
I'm doing good. Thank you, Tim, so much for joining us today. I know you are a very busy individual, so I do appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to join us and have this good conversation we're going to have today.
It is super pleasurable. So I really appreciate you asking, and I'm happy to be here. So
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much. So, I don't know how many people know you well enough, Tim. So, I wanted you to take a moment, if you wouldn't mind, sharing just a little bit about yourself and your background and let
Mhm.
everybody know a little bit more about who Tim Anderson really is.
Okay, so my name is Tim. I go by Tim or T occasionally, and sometimes even Timotheos, depending on what circle we're in. And I'm from the tiny state of Rhode Island, which is, we can drive around it in an hour. I've lived here all my life and enjoyed very much of it. Let's see, I started working in activities in 2007 when I graduated from my bachelor's degree in music and fell in love with it. Have been there ever since. I worked with an Alzheimer's specific adult day program, and then I also worked at a adult daycare that was kind of more generalized for older adults, and I was the director in that location. I also worked for a very progressive organization in East Providence, which I was the assisted living recreation director there,
Hmm.
and I was also or I was, and it was also a nursing home. It was also a memory care, and we had another activities director just for memory care and another one just for nursing. And shout out to them because I know they're hanging out. Um, and very progressive, very cool place to work. And then I had the opportunity to work for a community college, so I taught there for a while, and I'm also a consultant. So I teach a variety of different programs in a variety of different states because that's what teaching means these days. And that's love and life. I live in Rhode Island with my husband Matt. We've been together since it's longer than I'd like to admit. Let's see, so we got married in 2015. So we've been, and we got officially married at that time. Was like a year after they approved it in, countrywide.
Awesome.
Um, and yeah, that's a little bit about me and where I come from. I am a MEPAP instructor. I am also a CE instructor and all those various things too. So,
Well, you do a
um,
lot with instructional design, right? And so you
yes.
really, I know you just recently received your master's degree.
Hmm.
Congratulations on that with
Thank
online
you.
platform. How
Hmm.
timely that would be now with everything going on in the industry with how
Hmm.
online platforms are even more utilized and
Yes.
that's awesome. And how have you been able to handle all of that with the online instruction?
Very well. I mean, I actually love teaching online. I didn't think I would. I mean, I was that person at one point that was like, "No, I will never teach online because I don't do online things." That changed really quickly, and then I discovered how much I really love it. And the biggest thing for me is just making sure that whatever you're doing, like the teaching online, it just has to be interactive. So if you do live sessions, use them wisely. If you do, online only, use it wisely. Use the tools that you have to the best of your knowledge, and you will get some great results with that, which is another piece of what I do. It's the instructional design coaching. So,
I love
um,
that, and I know you've offered a couple of classes on
mhm,
that through Facebook. So if anybody's
mhm,
not friends with you yet on Facebook, I highly encourage you to check out Tim Anderson on Facebook and learn a little bit more as well. You've also been a part of the NAP family, so to speak. You're a
mhm,
member of our Cultural Competency Council, and thank you so
mhm,
much for your time there, as well
of
as
course.
helping us with the transition of our new format for our on-demand learning. And I know that
Mhm.
you have provided a few different webinars along the way too that are in the on-demand library, so to speak. And so I would encourage others to check those out as well. Well, it's Pride Month, right? So
Mhm.
I'm very excited to have you as our guest today. I appreciate you sharing just a little bit more about your husband Matt. I know I got
Mhm.
to meet Matt at our annual conference in last April in Minnesota, and it was so fun. He's a really fun guy. You've been very lucky to have him in your life. Congratulations
Very
on
much.
that. And I love what you
Beautiful.
say you have on your backdrop there because the word that's spelled there in the letters is inclusion.
Eh, there you
There
go. So you can
we
see
go.
it. There it is.
There we go. We see
Yep.
it. So thinking about that and everything that we're talking about with Pride in this month, in the month of
Mhm.
June, how do we, how can we build a better atmosphere of inclusion, regardless of what our personal or our spiritual views might be?
Well, I think the first thing I'd say to that is just remembering that when we choose to become caregivers, because that's an active choice, when we become caregivers, it has to stop being about us and start being entirely about the client.
Mm,
And we are there to support somebody on their journey, whatever that journey is. And we don't direct that journey. We're just there to support them on that journey. And I think, one thing that it's important is that it just because we might be supporting somebody on or on their life, that does not necessarily mean that that says anything about us personally. It simply means that we're a good caregiver because we are supporting the resident or the client or the person in the way they need us to support them,
mm,
because that's what I kind of personally feel it's about. And the more we can, you know share that sense of inclusivity, that like, this is, we're here for you as you are,
mm,
not you as we think you should be. We are here for you as you are. That if that's the message that you're sending, that will create that sense of inclusion. And that doesn't necessarily mean we should negate our own views, but rather we should acknowledge, again, it's about the person that we're caring for, not about us. So,
I
and I
think
think
that's
that's
such,
the first
yeah.
thing.
Well, Matt, Tim, you say that, and I think so much that we forget about that. So I appreciate that reminder, that we are caregivers.
Mhm.
I almost feel like we've signed the oath, to take care of these people, to be their advocate, to
Mhm.
advocate for them, to be their advocate. And we can't do that if we allow our personal beliefs, our religious beliefs to interfere with that
Correct.
process. And
Correct.
it's just as simple, I remember when I was like 21 years old and I had a patient that wanted a Playboy magazine. And, I was innocent me. I'm like, I've never seen porn. I didn't know anything about it. And it was embarrassing for me to go to the store to purchase that magazine. In fact, I even got my maintenance guy to do that for me. And he went over, he's like, sure, we'll go to 7-Eleven together. I'll show you right where they are and everything. And it was actually an interesting field trip with my maintenance guy, but I was able to provide the need for that individual. Now, it's not something that I partake in, but that doesn't mean I shouldn't support and advocate
Mhm.
for my resident. And that's the same with anything, with alcohol, with, smoking, with any of those things
Mhm.
that we sometimes were like, do we have to be a part of
Well,
that?
but again, I also think it's important that we acknowledge that this is, for a person who's LGBT, that this is not a choice.
Right.
This is their life. This is who they are. This is the person that they are and will always be. And so that is even more important, because if we do anything that might make that person feel less visible, less like themselves, that plays out negatively over the rest of their life.
Mm,
Um, you know, I think that's important, is that like, we have to acknowledge that this is the resident's journey and this is the right journey for them,
mm.
because it's not our place to say otherwise. So,
Thank you. Thank you so much for bringing that to the forefront. I think that
mhm,
is, yes, thank you. I appreciate that.
of course.
So as you know, this is Pride Month, but I also
Hmm.
learned that September is LGBTQ Awareness Month. So
Hmm.
I want us to, I know we focus a lot on Pride and yes, we should, but how can we celebrate Pride year round? How can we take it from the month of June and let's spread it out to the other 11 months that are happening?
Well, I think part of that also has to do with how your community acknowledges and shows themselves as a welcoming and affirming community, and that comes down to like your first your first experience in your building. So like, imagine I'm a resident coming into your building, and if the first thing I'm going to be looking for, and many other LGBT members might be looking for, are there safe zone stickers? Is all of the language on the bathrooms gender binary? Is all of it like, we're looking for these cues. And does your marketing literature have same gender couples as well as binary couples, and and everything in between? Those are things that I think first and foremost, like those are your first impressions. On your activities calendars, are you showing LGBT themed movies throughout the year? Because there are some that are really and positive ones. I I,
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
want to amend that a little bit, like positive ones, because that's important too. What to take from a current author on the subject, welcoming LGBT residents. I know it's kind of hard to see with the
Yeah.
background, but I'll share this later. But Tim Johnson talks about like how, having things like a gender and sexuality alliance, and having every now and then doing a inclusive bingo where you actually have bingo called by a drag queen, which could be a lot of fun. That was like my first date with my husband um, was to gay bingo, which, there was a part of me that when I saw where we were going, I was like, I literally just ran bingo earlier today. Why are we doing this? And then the other side of me was like, but wait, it's being run by a drag queen named Kitty Litter. This is extremely fun. Okay. Like this, but so like those kinds of things, like if we're seeing those things, if our LGBT elders are seeing that, it's giving that little indication that one, this is a safe space, and that we don't shy away from these, things that are out in the world, these kind of concerns, so to speak, so called. And I think that's like really part of it. And then also like on top of that, going into what is your what is your assessment language? Are you, if you ask me about um, or if you ask some individuals about their relationship with their mother or father, this isn't my experience, but there many other LGBT individuals may not even identify with their mother or father anymore, or
Right.
anybody in their family. Some of them have been ostracized by their family.
Right.
And, so for for people, like when we go into a community or when we're being assessed, try to use, non-gender specific language, try to um, try to use things like, who are important people in your life, as opposed to who are the members of your family, because that might look different to somebody who identifies as LGBT, and their relationships might look different too. So
Mhm.
so it's not just in the programming that we necessarily have, but also like in the little things that we do throughout, and the language that we use. And another thing would be, how many programs do we have that are pointlessly gendered? Um, to use a term from, a YouTuber that I frequently watch, like, maybe not just having a Father's Day and a Mother's Day, but maybe an all families day,
Mhm.
or letting residents know that anybody is welcome,
Yep.
because a person um, who is a transgender man, born biologically female but transitioned to being a male, they might identify as being a father, and they're going to want to know that they're safe going to that event. And so maybe shifting our language a bit can also assist with that. Of
Yeah.
course, there's the let's go to the local pride parade. Let's go to I mean, there's that stuff too, but it doesn't always have to be that big.
And I think that's a trap that many of us fall into, especially during the month of June, is we want to do these ginormous events. And everything you've shared here is just like perfect. Why can't we have these types of programs? Why can't our marketing materials affect that? I want to go back. You said first and
Hmm.
foremost, the safe zone stickers. So talk a little bit
Sure.
more about maybe for those of us that don't even know what those are,
Okay.
what would be a safe zone sticker?
Okay. So safe zone stickers look like usually like a little triangle that's got a rainbow in it, or they can be a pink triangle that has the word safe zone underneath it.
Okay.
You can get them through Safe Zone, the organization. They actually do a free training program, and they offer free training materials that are available for populations and for communities to use. And those little stickers are like, like many people have like homing beacons. Like we look for those things because
Yes.
that's what, and it's subtle.
Right.
And this is, I like to say this, like, um, it's the little things that you don't think anybody else notices that people notice.
Mhm.
And that those little things, or even simply having that, this is not really safe zone per se, but even like having your pronouns listed on your name tags, like that's a cue. It's a cue that tells people that you're a safe person to talk to about gender and sexuality, and that's what is important. um,
Yeah.
so that's like, those safe zone stickers are great, and you can get them through the safe zone. You can order them
Okay.
on Amazon, I think, too, but
Awesome.
or you can make them yourself, because
Yeah.
they're just so helpful. Even the human rights campaign stickers that are
Mhm.
like the equal sign,
Yes. Uh-huh.
those are perfect because those are even more neutral, but the people who know what they are.
Right. Right.
And it's again, it's creating that environment that this is a safe space.
Right. I think that is so good. I personally have like a rainbow sticker on my clipboard that I use just for that purpose. And so I was just trying to figure out, okay, is that the same thing that I'm doing, or do I need to maybe change it up? But I like the human rights sign too. I think
Mhm,
that would be a good one to really add to that. So, as we continue discussing about this, how do we
mhm.
make ourselves then, as a professional, how can we make ourselves more approachable then to people who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender?
Okay. I think the first thing that is important is we need to be aware of our own assumptions.
Mm.
And for because two things tend to happen to LGBT individuals, or people who identify as LGBT. One is everybody assumes you're straight. And the other thing is that they also feel like if you are LGBT, then you should be out. And that could be the other thing, which is, it's a personal choice to come out of the closet. And it's because every time you come out of the closet, you're taking an enormous risk, because you could be afraid of discrimination, abuse, all the, like, that's another thing, is if somebody does feel safe enough to come out to you, please tell them thank you. And say that you invalidate the fact that they took an enormous risk by sharing who they are as a person with you. So I think like that's a huge piece of it too. Um, and like thinking about that being approachable, like going in, instead of saying like, again, like, who's your, if you're talking to a person who appears as a woman, in your particular definition, is the first thing you ask them, who's your husband?
Mm.
Which, first of all, is two assumptions: are that they're a woman and therefore they should be married, and two, if they are married, they should be with a man. Like, that's those things, like, we don't realize they come out of our mouths, but they do. And so it's, instead, who is somebody important in your life? Or when you see that somebody's picture seems to have a place of importance in the person's house or a person's room, say to them, hey, I noticed this picture is always up and it seems like it's really important to you. Is it all right if I ask you about this? Does this person have any significance? It's not, there's nothing wrong with being curious, asking. And actually, if you ask things from a place of curiosity, it tends to go over well, because you're asking from a place of curiosity, not of judgment.
Mm.
And everybody is afraid they're going to be judged, and everybody's afraid that they're going to be thought of as invisible.
Wow.
So the more we can show them that they don't have to be invisible through our words and our actions, and our little cues, the better. So I sort of went off on a tangent there, but
No,
I
I
don't
think,
know.
Tim, thank you for, I appreciate the tangent because I think that everything you said, I think we've all been guilty of. Having that a moment where we just make the assumptions, or we rely too heavily on our biases, that, everybody has bias. We all
Mhm,
have our own biases. And so we have to really, in order to be culturally humble, to really practice cultural humility, we need to recognize that we do have those biases and that we need to check them at the door, so to speak,
mhm,
anytime we go to meet somebody new. I love what you said. As activity professionals, we assess all the time, we ask questions all the time. But taking it into that curiosity level, I think will be even more appreciated from the individuals that we would communicate with. And so I really appreciate that. I appreciate your comments on that.
well, that's, you're welcome. And I think one thing to add to that is, like, two important skills that I learned from being a life coach were asking permission and being curious, because being curious is always a good thing. Asking permission gives the person the ability to choose whether or not they want to share.
Mm,
And our profession is all about choices and offering choices, so that a person can continue to be the best person that they can be with as minimal restriction as possible from their illness, from other things. Like, we're that is our goal, and so asking permission is another way of offering that choice to them.
mm.
And I think that's important.
I do too. I also think it's important that we need to get rid of these closets. Who came up with the term closet? Come out of the closet. That's just an interesting and a terrible term
Mhm.
to have for individuals to have to feel like they have to live in the closet. They need to feel
and it
more.
can be and it can be exhausting living in that closet, let me tell you, because at one point I did exist in a closet, and I do remember what that was like. And that, you have to be very, very careful. What can I say? What can't I say? What's something that might show that I might not be straight? But when I decided at the end of the day, it was more about, I value truthfulness, and so therefore I'm just simply going to be truthful, and being in the closet feels like I'm lying all the time, then I chose to come out as a result. That was my choice. I made it when I made it for particular reasons, and it was a life-changing experience. And I've done it many, many times over the fact of my life. And that's another thing to kind of bring out, is like, people who are LGBT are coming out multiple times. It doesn't just happen at one spot and like forever you're then associated with being the rainbow king. It
Right.
doesn't really work like that. I have to come out of the closet every time I walk into a store with my husband and people assume we're brothers. I have to come to the closet every time I go into a community and somebody asks me who my wife is because they see I have a wedding ring. Like, those are things like, and if you think about it, having to do that over and over again in your entire life is exhausting, and it's kind of frustrating because you're kind of having to like bare your soul just so that people can see you as a person and not as the social norm that they think should exist.
Mm.
And because that's the fear. So, and that's not necessarily what people mean when they ask those questions, but it's those little buttons that get pushed. So
Oh, thank you
um,
for sharing that, Tim. I think many of us don't realize that you're coming out of the closet so many times like that. So I appreciate you sharing something so personal that can really help each one of us to be better community individuals, right? To better human beings, to recognize that everybody has their story and everybody has their journey, like you said, of that what they're going on. And I think we have to just be those people that are standing on the sidelines cheering them on. Way to go. Keep it going. You keep
mhm,
moving forward. Keep moving forward.
absolutely.
So, are there any words of wisdom you would like to share with us as we end our time together?
I mean, the only thing I would probably add to all the other stuff that we talked about, I thought this really covered a lot of great stuff, is thinking about resources that are out there. And Safe Zone is an excellent resource. They have the free training resources, as I mentioned earlier. The Sage Rhode Island is working on, and I'm kind of connected with them, helping them design a training program that will be available and accessible to others. There's those types of programs. This great book, Welcoming LGBT Residents, I can't recommend it enough. There's an excellent YouTube video out there that was done by Life Elder Care, which is called Safe and Visible.
Mm,
Highly recommend it. It's an excellent training module and a really good program to watch, because it's got some great scenarios in it. Things, scenarios that might not be immediately obvious, but when you watch them, you're like, oh my God, that makes perfect sense. So those are like some of the things I would really throw out there, because I think it is good to know where the resources are, so that you know where to look, and you know where that training is, because everything starts with a conversation about the topic, and training is a good way to do that. So
mm. Thank you for sharing those resources. I will make sure we add those so that everybody can have access to them and be able to recognize them and utilize them. Because I think, if we don't know where to go,
mhm.
then we're not going to be able to make good open-minded decisions on what we need to make decisions on. Oh, great. This has been an amazing conversation, Tim. I want to thank you so much for your time with us today, and hopefully everybody was able to enjoy it just as much as I have. I really learned a few different things, understanding the safe zone. I wasn't familiar with safe zone. I was
Right?
familiar with the other resources, and I think that is such an important thing. And I want to just point out to everybody out there, if you think that you don't have any LGBT residents in your community, you're wrong.
Hmm.
So please,
Yes.
you are so wrong. And especially, when you think that you're in an area where those individuals do not exist, you're completely wrong.
Hmm. We're everywhere. First of all, we're everywhere, and also we're not always. We don't all walk around wearing rainbows. It's not really a thing. Like we don't. We're not green. The last time I checked, it's not something you're going to necessarily be able to see. And just because a person moves into your building and has had a relationship with a person of the opposite gender does not mean they're not LGBT. And or and I learned this from my own experience with residents, um, is some residents also have children that are LGBT, and they are going to want to know that their children are safe coming to visit them. So those are things to also have to be kind of in the back of our minds, as we're thinking about this too. So yeah, we're everywhere, guys. Just um, yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're a rural, urban, big city,
Mm-mm.
small town.
Hmm.
You're everywhere. As like you said, I love that, Tim. Thank
Yep.
you so much for pointing that out. Beautiful words of wisdom. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We will be back here in a couple weeks, everybody. We hope to see you once again on our NAP News Now. We hope everybody will stay safe and stay sane. Take care.
Bye, everybody.